So folks, we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe we'll have a few scragglers here, but I want to give you guys the full benefit of the time we have. I will not be sitting down on the stage. I'm actually up here behind you, so this is going to be kind of Carl Sagan style, right, while we talk about Windows 8 here. And a couple of times, we'll throw the lights up if people have questions and stuff like that. But the goal of this session, the abstract, was kind of to tell you the history behind our modern design language and how we thought about it, to what we used to call Metro. We might call it Metro a few times in this meeting. Just don't tell anyone. And we will show you some of the things that went into the thinking behind Windows 8 and actually show you how Windows 8 works too. So you'll get to see that in this session. And then also we have a lounge downstairs where we have a couple of devices. So if you want to actually go play with one and touch one, we have a couple of devices down there that you'll be able to play with as well. Cool? So let's dim the lights and let's get started. So what you're actually seeing here is the actual desktop to Windows 8. And this is my machine. And if we ever gave a device to someone and the very first time they'd use it, the first thing we'd ask them to do is enter in their Microsoft account. And just like when you get a new PC, they ask you for a username. What we like to do in Windows 8 is say, hey, give us an account, and if you don't have one you want to sign up as a Microsoft account, if you don't have an email address that you want to use, we can actually sign you up for one. And once you do that, that becomes your way to sign into this machine. What gets interesting about that is that you can use that on multiple Windows 8 devices. So I have about 3 Windows 8 devices right now. I have a RT prototype device, I have a laptop, and then I have another tablet-based device as well. And because I use that Microsoft account, all of my settings and my apps are stored between all 3 of those devices, and all of my passwords are stored between all 3 of those devices too. And because I can do things like link LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter into my live account, it means that any apps that take advantage of those services or use my account, I don't even need to sign into. So if I download a Twitter application, it'll just sign me into that. If I have an Xbox Live account, it just signs me into that without me having to do anything when I download the app. Now, people that are used to Windows or even used to OS 10 or Lion, this is a very different looking interface. So what we're actually looking at here is a series of tiles. And these tiles actually come to life. This is my real desktop. I haven't turned off anything. So I'm getting real emails here that you see from Mr. Satarsky there. Those are pictures that I've taken of my son's football game. These are apps that I've looked at that are actually updating in real time and pushing notifications to me. And one thing that I can do is I can actually pan across all of these things here, and you can kind of see that little dot there is where my finger actually is. And you can see all of the apps that I've actually downloaded and that I'm using on my device right now. And one of the things that we like to do is we like to introduce people to the gestures and the things that are new about this interface. And those of you that saw my talk this morning, one of the things that we actually talked about was a concept called Fitts Law. And Fitts Law posits that it's really easy to hit things that are reachable and close to me. It's easier to actually use them, and the bigger things are, the easier it is to interact with them as well. And one of the challenges we've had with interfaces over the past 20, 30 years is as they get higher and higher density in pixels, it gets harder to select things. So we've really thought about that with Windows in terms of what will this interface look like on this device, which for my laptop is a 12-inch screen, and it's a resolution of about 1366 by 786, all the way up to a 60-inch display that might be a 1080p display or it might be a Retina type of display. And when I'm on those displays, this is what's called a liquid design. So it'll actually show me more icons and stack these differently for how I want the screen to work. Now, one of the things that we can kind of see here right now is I can also select icons here and kind of move them around and rearrange things. And one of the first models that we teach people to do is when we scroll, we have a feature that we like a lot. There was a gentleman here from B today that was talking about gestural and touch interfaces. And you probably saw in those videos that there was a lot of press and hold, which is a really lousy touch gesture if you think about it. So one of the first things that we show people in Windows 8 is that you can do something called swiping to select. So right here you'll see that maybe I've got a bunch of applications here that I want to get rid of. So I can just swipe them down. And what I'm doing is I'm just dragging my finger over these. And this is a great gesture that I can use to select things because it's a really easy gesture to do and it doesn't require a lot of precision when I do it. And when I do that, you'll actually see that a little app bar appeared at the bottom of the screen. Those are basically contextual controls and menuing systems that, you know what, I have get out of the way when I don't need them. So here, it kind of knows that there's a few actions I could do. I could unpin these from my start screen. I could decide, oops, I didn't really mean to do that, and unpin them so it unselects them. Or I could add new names or group things. But the other thing you probably notice is, you know what, boy, Chris, you sure got a lot of those. It'd get old if I had to navigate through all of those all the time. Another new gesture interface that we've actually done is something called semantic zoom. And semantic zoom is a way to shift context of a series of data that you're looking at and quickly jump around. So what I'm going to actually do is pinch the screen in, and oops, we'll see here on my touch device, and you'll see that it gives me kind of a jumpless view, so I can jump all the way to the end of my screen and quickly navigate for content. This is something that is new, and right, swiping to select is new, but they're kind of what I call doorknob moves. If you think back to Josh Clark's talk this morning, these are things that if I show you how to do it once, you will never forget how to do it. So as an example, I'm sure a lot of folks in this room are pretty good at handling doorknobs. You might not remember when you learned how to use one. These are the types of gestures that we actually want to bring into Windows 8 and have people use consistently in applications because they're easy and they're repeatable, and when I show you once, you know how to do them. And when I use them predictably in all my applications, it means that once somebody knows how to use one Windows application, they know how to use another one. So let's continue thinking about how this actually works, and I'll show you something that's probably the most important feature of Windows, and that's something that we call charms. And charms are something that actually appear at the side of my screen by just flicking the side of the screen. And why do I do this? Well, I do this because I know the edges of a touch device are really useful for my thumbs and my fingers and all that to kind of invoke content. So I'm actually going to slide out from the left here, and you'll see my little charms here. And there's a couple of things that I can do, and I can do these for every single app that I develop for Windows 8. First is I have a repeatable and consistent place for all of my settings. So how many times have you ever used an app on other platforms where the settings box is just a hodgepodge junk drawer that is in a different place than every app? One of my favorite apps to kind of study this is go look at weather applications, or look at time applications or alarm clocks, or look at travel applications where you have to add a flight. They're in 15 different places in all of those apps, and you have to hunt through the app to figure it out. Well, what we like to do in our interfaces is make sure that PC settings are always going to be in the same place. And as an interaction designer, I hate designing settings. It's the most boring part of the app. I want to do the fun and unique stuff. So we've kind of enabled a way for people to kind of get away from the boring stuff when they build their apps with that. Now the other thing that I can do is you'll see I actually have a search menu here too. And this search menu lets me actually start searching for an app immediately. And here you saw me swipe out to select. Now I may search for Word, and you'll see I get my Word application. I may search for USA Today, and I get my USA Today application. And it kind of autofills things for me. And you'll see that I'm actually searching my apps. But I can do things that are more complex too. So I may want to search for the word Syria. I may decide, well, you know what, I'm going to go search for Syria on Bing. So just by selecting Bing, I think I lost my internet here, maybe. Did I knock it out? I knocked my cable out of my computer here. Let's wait and see what happens if I come back online. We'll see if I'm back online. Well, this might be a fun demo if we don't have internet access, so we'll see what happens here. Oh, we're coming back. Okay. So we'll be back online here in a second. So I can actually search through different applications. So let's actually see if the internet likes me now. We'll search, and we'll go search in Bing. And we'll see that I've got a bunch of search results out of Bing. Now, I may decide that I want to search Syria through different apps too. So maybe I want to search it on Engadget. And we'll actually see that I get the results from Engadget. I may actually want to do it in IE, and I may have a different search engine in IE. I have it set to Bing, but I might have it set to something else elsewhere. Let's try it on maps. Will it actually find Syria on a map? And we'll see that it actually does. So I can search all these different things from one box, and I want you to stop and think about why this is real important. I can actually put a consumer into an application without actually having them to have to open that application. So if I want to search deals on acupuncture, and I don't want to go to Groupon's site or look at my daily deals, email from Groupon or Living Social, all I have to do is start a search on this device, and I can search across all of these different apps that I have. Imagine if you're someone that sells things to someone, if you're an Amazon, or if you're an eBay, or even a Craigslist. Having an application that allows you to do that from the desktop is incredibly valuable and incredibly important. And it's also incredibly useful as an end user for me. I also have some other things that I can do that are pretty interesting. So if I go back and I look at a concept, let's look at share. So I want to go back and I'm going to pop open Internet Explorer. And this is a version of Internet Explorer that's kind of optimized for touch. Let's go look at TechMeme, which is one of my favorite sites. I want to see what some of the headlines are there. And let's say I'm going to go look at an article on The Verge, love The Verge, right? They're kind of local hometown boys in terms of all their development. They do that here in DC. And I may have an article here that I like. Well, there's a whole bunch of ways I can share, right? I've got all these like, and I've got these tweet and, in share and stuff like that. Let's just try to share this on LinkedIn here. And you'll see that it takes me over to LinkedIn. And I get that OAuth screen, right? I'm not signed into LinkedIn, so it wants me to sign in before I share. How many times have you actually done this on Facebook or Twitter and you just decide, you know what, screw it. I'm not even going to bother, right? Because it's a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to my screen. And one thing you'll notice is I don't have a bunch of tab bars in IE, right? I have this little bar, and I swipe to select from the top of the screen, and it opens up all these little search bars that I had. So I'm actually closing some down so I don't get too much junk here. But if I go back to my screen here, one of the things I can do with my charms is I can share. I've got a whole bunch of apps that I can share to. So for example, I've got a little Twitter application called MetroTwit. And what I can actually do is share this article here and type in my link. I've also got some other apps here that I can share from, like Rowie here, and it'll actually auto-populate, maybe share the article, and it depends on what's shared. Now you'll see here I actually selected the word "the," so if I just wanted to share a quote from the article, I could highlight it in the article, but if I want to share the whole article, I can actually go up here and use Rowie and see, and it populates the link for me, and then I'm going to really tweet this. So if you go look at my Twitter feed, you'll just see this pop up here. So just one swipe and a click, and I can share things. And I'm showing you how this works in Internet Explorer, but it can work for every app that actually designs for it. And what's amazing about this feature is I don't need to worry about all the other apps that can share. Other developers can build apps that will accept shared content, and what I can actually do is count on the fact that there are always going to be applications that a consumer is going to download to help me share. So that's just one example of some of our charms. And it looks like our internet doesn't like us again here, so that's maybe why that's not working here. But if we come back, it seems to like us. But if it comes back, we have other shares too. So we have a quick way to get to our start screen. And then we also have a way to share to devices. So this is an example here where I'm actually projecting this interface. So I'm actually duplicating my interface. But if I had a printer hooked up here, I may share content to a printer. So one swipe and a click, and I'm printing something out. I may have a song or a video on this screen, and I may just do one swipe, share, and play content on this device to another device. So we actually have a program called Smart Glass for Xbox, and I can actually use that Smart Glass application and go look at movie previews on my tablet and use it as a companion device. And I may decide, oh, you've got to see this awesome new preview for the Batman movie. One click, I can share that right to my Xbox, and it will actually play that content right on my Xbox. Think of Sonos devices where you can go to a friend's party and take out your phone or a device like this and just immediately sync your playlist right to their stereo system. These are the types of experiences that we're going to start seeing with Windows. And what's great about this is as a developer or designer, you have to know what it is, but you don't really have to build all this infrastructure because we built it for you. And those features coupled with settings are one of the most useful little features that we have right here in Windows. So that's just a quick overview. What I'd like to do is actually walk through some slides now and show you more features as Windows and kind of talk about our rationale for why we did some of this stuff along the way. So I think I told you who I was earlier. When we think about modern design, the foundation of this thinking is something called Bauhaus influence design. Is anybody familiar with Bauhaus? Someone give a shout out, yay for Bauhaus. So Bauhaus was really a movement that came out of Germany in the 20s and 30s. And it was about designers sort of being like systems engineers or architects and really having an understanding of the materials and the medium they worked with and respecting that. And it was a focus more on removing and reduction than it was on adding noise and ornamentation to what they did. These design movements evolved into other movements too. I would say the distill art movement influenced Bauhaus greatly. And then you have things like international style, right, or Swiss style design. Anybody a friend of Mad Men at all in the room? When you look at Roger Sterling's office and you see all that stuff, this is really kind of the style and the definition of the ethos of that type of design. It was really about form over function, right, and really focusing on the form and how things worked. And where you see this quite often is in signage for public transportation or airports. So has anybody ever been to the airport in Madrid? People don't speak a lot of English in Madrid when you're there. You really got to find your way and fend for yourself if you don't speak Spanish there. But their airport is one of the easiest airports to get around. It's got beautiful signage and wayfinding. If you've ever had to ride the London Underground, they've got beautiful signage and wayfinding. And really, this was kind of the inspiration for what we thought about when we thought, what should Windows be? And these Metro principles, we actually talked about them a little bit this morning. They're focused on doing more with less, pride and craftsmanship, fast and fluid, being authentically digital, and winning is won by leveraging all these other things that we can do. So I want to jump back into Windows real quick and talk about that. Let's go back into Internet Explorer. You know, when we look at Internet Explorer here right now, there's something we can see when I read an article. One is all my Chrome goes away completely. I don't have any buttons on the top or the bottom when I'm consuming content. I can pinch and zoom and do all the things that I actually want to do in the interface. But you know what? I don't have all that junk there when I don't need it. And when I need it, it's only a flick away where I could add a new screen if I wanted to. So let's look at another little design website here. And actually, this is my website that's not live yet, so that actually won't go anywhere. So let's ignore that. We'll open another screen here. We could go back to TechMeme, so I don't have to type anything in here. We could look at other articles here, and I could have, 10 or 12 tabs opened here. And you know what? Because this is a touch device, it's just a flick away from me to control that stuff. And also, I can actually right-click on my mouse if I happen to be hooked up to a device with a keyboard and mouse, and that content appears right away. So it's an easy click for me to enter in data. And I'll show you a few things here that are kind of interesting. One is, you notice I have an on-screen keyboard that actually popped up there that I can use. And if I back up my screen, I could, plug in something here. But then you'll notice right now I'm using the keyboard on my device. It goes away, right? Because it knows I have a keyboard attached. All of these things that I'm showing you are like, God, that's got to be a pain in the ass to build. When you start a default template for a Windows 8 project, you get all of these interface affordances for free. So these devices will work, and the software will work with the mouse and a keyboard, but it also provides a great touch-first experience. And this Chrome goes out of the way when I don't need it. That's an example of less is more when we think about how we build things. Another example that we can think about is if we go back to this presentation, is I'm just going to cycle back to my presentation, is we talk about pride and craftsmanship. And when we talk about pride and craftsmanship, what we're really about is building in those repeatable interface cues that we can have in a Windows application that let people know how to use it. So once they've used Windows 8 once, they pretty much know how to use all the applications as long as they follow those guidelines. And it means that applications are just easy to use in Windows. So a great example of a great experience is I'm actually going to go search and I'm going to go show you the USA Today application. So this is an application here right now. How many people have seen the USA Today website or, grabbed a copy of the paper today, right? It's a pretty popular paper here. This is a great interface that really shows the essence of the brand, right? You really see the visualization and you feel the emotion of the content that they're actually using in their head story here. And we can see I've got a beautiful way to kind of scroll through and see that story. It's a big immersive experience. And even these columns that I scan through, you might say, oh, those look really narrow. Well, does anybody know what the average character length should be in good print design? About 78 characters, right? That's what the human brain is good at processing. That's why when you read a book or an annual report and you see those multi-column layouts, it's because it helps legibility. And we kind of forgot about that all when the web came along and browsers came along. Windows kind of brings that good design and those affordances that really help us as humans when we experience software. So we kind of bring that back into this interface. And again, it's only a click away to get back to my home screen. And I can actually look at days and pictures here where I may have pictures loading up. And we can see that through direct manipulation, I can look at the pictures really easily and look at what's going on over the day. I may want to actually go back and I have videos that pop up very seamlessly and quickly that I may want to show if I'm watching a video. So we'll see a statement here that Obama has. And again, you'll notice I don't have a lot of buttons there, right? And you'll also notice I have a lot of consistency in how I lay out things. And again, that pride and craftsmanship means we can still have applications that look unique and powerful, but there's that fit and finish there that's really important. And we can see here that I have affordances, like if I want to see more articles and top stories, I can kind of navigate through things and kind of load those things up. And it's really easy. It's just a click away for me to kind of refresh those screens and make that work. So this is a type of experience in a pride and craftsmanship that lets me put the content and experience first versus all the Chrome and other junk that we've been conditioned to over 40 years of design. It really hasn't changed since Xerox PARC invented it. So if I go back and we talk about some of these other concepts here, the other concept I want to talk about is called be fast and fluid. So how many folks have iPhones in the room? So how many folks have ever heard of an application called Cocktail Flow? If you haven't, go download it. It's a free app. I want you to go download it. And I'm going to show you my version of Cocktail Flow here. And I've got it buried here. And sometimes it's easier for me just to type a few buttons to kind of search. This is one of my favorite applications. It shows me how to make great drinks. And we all know, anyone that's been around DC for a while, this is a town that likes nice craft cocktails. And this is the application that's perfect for it. And I want you to look at some of the animation here and how beautiful and fast some of these things are. When I want to build these drinks and navigate through this interface, interface. Number one, you see it's fast, but two, you can kind of see as I scroll, it kind of snaps to my new view, so it's really easy and seamless. It almost feels like liquid when I navigate it. And when I look at these beautiful interfaces, the subtlety of how the animation builds, my animation is purposeful, right? It's delightful, it has an emotional, fun tone to it, but it's also an application that just looks beautiful. And if you go look at this app on iPhone, I would argue that the effectiveness of this app and the connection it makes with you is a world of difference in this interface model than it is on iOS right now. And this is just some of the potential you can do when you apply great design thinking to how to build Windows 8 applications. The other thing we can think about is being authentically digital. And authentically digital is about getting rid of ornamentation that skews towards reality or skeuomorphism, which is a concept that's been talked about in a couple of talks today. And that means when I go back to my home screen here, I don't have a lot of drop shadows here, right? I don't have any funny reflections or light sources that come from two physically impossible directions. I want to get all that ornamentation and that chrome out of the way in the interface. And it doesn't mean I can't be creative. It doesn't mean that I can't have pretty things that I'm going to look at, but it does mean that, I'm not going to hide behind that convention and that visual noise when my app may suck or not be a very good idea, right? I really let the content be first. The other thing that you'll see that I do on my canvas here is I don't have a lot of buttons, right? If I want to move something, I grab it and I move it, right? If I want to click something, I grab it and I click it, right? I don't need a button. I don't need a more arrow to tell me what to do. It's really easy for me to navigate. And being authentically digital means letting go of those artificial physical conventions. Does my contact book really need to look like a Rolodex? How many people know what a Rolodex is anymore if they're under 25 years old, right? There's these conventions that we hold on to in software, and some of them just, quite frankly, aren't applicable anymore. And then finally, the last concept that we kind of think about is what I call win as one. And winning as one means leveraging those features like search and sharing and charms, and understand that developers and designers are going to give you great ways in their own app to share content. So one example is, there's probably some folks in this room that are kind of foodies. I'm kind of a foodie, and I'm one of those weird dudes that takes pictures of my food before I eat it sometimes. And you know what? I'll use my smartphone to do it. I'll take a photo with my phone, and my phone is actually linked up to a cloud service I have. And we'll see, I really to show this if I have any embarrassing photos, but I'll show my little photo apps here, and we'll see what I got sitting on SkyDrive right now. We'll see a few photos that I have here and stuff like that. But sometimes when I take photos, I'll just directly load them up to the cloud. So they back up off my phone automatically. Now these pictures were not taken with my smartphone. Wouldn't you want this smartphone if the pictures look this nice taking it? So these weren't taken with my smartphone. But if I did, what I can do is when I load up pictures from my smartphone, what I can do is I can access all those pictures on the cloud right from my device. So let's say I have a food spotting app here. I can just simply pick that photo, and it can be in the cloud, but because my cloud account is connected to my Microsoft account, all that stuff that sits out there is seamlessly connected across all my devices. So that winning as one concept is a really important one, and what's great is that you don't need to build all of that. It's fundamentally built into the OS, and that's the other thing that we thought about when we think about these principles. Now these are principles right here that you see right now that I'm showing you how they apply to Windows 8, but there are a set of principles that we use in Windows Phone. There are a set of principles that we use in Xbox. There are even a set of principles that we use in the new version of Office. So if you've played with the new preview of Office, if you have a Windows device, you'll notice that the interface and the feedback is actually completely different than all previous versions. There's a fluidity when you type, and the keyboards and how transitions work, and all of that stuff that's actually quite fascinating. And then maybe I can show you a little bit here. Like you'll actually see, and it's happening so fast right now, there's these subtle transitions that kind of update fades when I kind of click through my presentation. So this is my real little PowerPoint that I'm actually showing you. And there's just a subtlety to how, like, when I edit content and stuff like that in terms of how it works. So let's talk about a few of these concepts and what they mean for us right now. And actually, we just talked about that screen. We talked about doing more with less, which is about removing distractions. And we kind of talked about the concept that Chrome is a distraction, and it can distract users from what your app is best at. Right now, there's kind of a one-size-fits-all model to software design, especially in desktop computing and sometimes tablet computing, where I want to show you everything at once, and everything has to be available all the time. But the reality is a lot of that stuff is a pain in the ass, and we can make it go away and kind of enjoy our content and experience more when it does. And I talked about a concept that when we went in focus groups and said, hey, draw me windows. This is what people drew, right? They're actually drawing the Chrome, right, of the interface, which is kind of interesting. And after we showed some early concepts of what Windows 8 would look like in the start tiles, this is what they drew. Now this looks pretty similar to this, right? The only thing is, what they're representing actually isn't Chrome now, right? It's actually kind of content that actually sits in that interface. That was kind of an important distinction for us. And the reason that we can do that is we provide 3 sets of affordances in the interface that let you get rid of all that clutter. One is the actual app bars that we can invoke just by swiping from the top or the bottom of the screen. You'll notice I have a lot of controls at the bottom of the screen. Do you know why that is? It's because my finger will block things when I select things. So I avoid occlusion by putting a lot of buttons and controls at the bottom of my screen. We also actually have charms that actually invoke because it's really easy to just hit that sidebar and slide that stuff out and get quick access to things. And you've probably seen me on this interface right now. Most of what I'm doing is actually touching the screen while I demo this, and I can move really fast through this interface. And then finally, you actually saw semantic zoom and how we can use semantic zoom to zoom around applications quickly. And I'll tell you, the one thing when you start using a Windows 8 device, you start testing every app for semantic zoom, and you get so frustrated when it's not there because it's such a great visual shorthand way to navigate through applications right now. And the great news is when you start building a default application, all of our templates for how you would build an application start with all of this built in. And there's another concept here too, which I probably can't show you here because I don't have the resolution on the device, but we actually have a snapped mode where you can actually snap applications to the corner of the screen or the side of the screen. That means you can have 2 applications open at once. So as an example, I may have a travel booking app opened while I have, for an airline, well, maybe I have a search engine open, right? And I'm deciding where to go. Or I may have an application open where I'm watching a football game and I have my Twitter app open. I'm watching a Twitter feed for that game at the same time. I need a certain resolution that this projector doesn't support in this room, but just about every new Windows device will come out with a screen that can actually support that multifaceted screen. This is great for a user because you know what it means? You get 2 apps for the price of 1. As a developer, it's not so great. You kind of got to design 2 apps, but the reality is it's such a compelling, valuable experience for the consumer, and it totally increases the flexibility in how they can use your application, not just on its own, but in conjunction with other applications. So doing more with less is pretty important and one of the ways that we think about doing more with less means thinking very carefully about what your application should be on Windows 8 too. So for example, quite frankly, on Windows 8, I want the apps to do something really compelling. And the example that I use is Flipboard. Has anybody ever heard of Flipboard? Flipboard is one of my favorite apps on iOS, and when it started, it did one thing really well. It let you consume an activity stream from Twitter, Facebook, or your favorite blog that had an RSS feed, and actually did it in a better way than those tools did themselves. They didn't have liking, they didn't have commenting, they didn't have features, but it did that one thing really well. And what we see a lot with Windows is those apps that say, hey, I'm going to do one thing very well, or I'm going to be the best cocktail app, or I'm going to be the best travel app, or the best business app, and these are the 3 things I'm going to do really well. That's what we find really makes it simple to do all these things with your application. So, in summary, content's the heart of the experience, and we really want to get rid of all the junk in our interfaces. And we also want to solve for distractions and not discoverability, because Windows is so easy to navigate around. All of this conditioning that I've had as an information designer to say people always need to know where they are don't really matter anymore, because it's easy enough to get around the interface that I can actually solve for the distractions and not worry about discoverability in my application. And that lets people be immersed in what they love, and then they can explore the rest on their own. So we talked a little bit about integrating commands into the content and leveraging the edge. You saw what I talked about with direct manipulation in terms of how I navigated through photos or how I would actually leverage the edge of the screen. And you saw how I would provide commands contextually as well, right? So they would only appear when I need them. Navigation is the same thing that we think about with that. So we're focused about where we are at and not where we might need to go, and kind of integrating those navigational elements into the content. So if I go back to my USA Today app, and let's go see if I still have that open here, and you'll see me just cycling through my different apps here. I can, click that money section. Well, here I can add more screens, but let's find, I'm going to go find another app here that we can look at for this. Let's look at, I think NBC probably has an app here somewhere. Let me go search for that. So we'll look at my NBC News app here. We'll let this load up with some content here. And we'll see I just open that app, and the content loads up pretty quick. And I can actually navigate through this screen and look at some of this content here. And if I look at some of this content here, what I should be able to do, and actually they're changing my app here. This is a new one. Let me go back. We'll find something else. let's see, do we like maybe the LA Times? Let's see if LA Times has an app. Let's try Chicago. You know what? I might have to go to the store and buy an app. So let's go look. So here's a Chicago Tribune. So here's a little app in the store, you know, that I found. I'm going to go install this real quick. So we'll kind of wait for that to install. And then it'll probably tell me as soon as it's installed. So that app's installed. And I'm going to go ahead and launch it here. And we'll see that it'll start loading up some content for me. It's loading up a little slow. There's a little bit of content there. But I can actually click that header. And what that header does is just take me right to the entertainment section. So we kind of recommend folks to make sure that everything that's on a canvas that can be clickable and take me somewhere will actually do it. It looks like our internet connection's getting a little pokey here right now, so it's taking a while to load up that content. But that model of just getting away from the content and staying away from having to have buttons and icons and doohickeys and doodads, oops, and I got a little too far, and I can't snap here too, so I'll just cycle through back here. I have a little jump menu that works on my bigger screens too, but we're such a narrow resolution here, it's a little tough on this display. That I can avoid all that stuff. And you'll see here, you know, this is just a little wireframe of an application. That's Chrome that I have there, you know, those little links. I don't really need those in my interfaces because I can use direct manipulation. I don't even need to tab a lot of content across the top of the screen because it's still Chrome. What I want to do is up-level that content and create these scrollable pockets that I can use semantic zoom to actually pinch down and look at this. So if you can see here, this is like a wireframe for a travel app where maybe I would have, you know, my featured destinations, my last-minute deals and my trips. On most websites and most apps, those are links. What I actually want it to be in a Windows 8 app is content. I want to show you what those things are, right? I don't want, you know, a restaurant on a map that says 3 miles away from you. I can tell you that in text, but I can also show you a beautiful picture of whatever their signature dish is, right? And I want to do that for all the restaurants in a given genre and not have you go dig for it, but up-level the content and have it sit there. And then I want to use semantic zoom so I can quickly jump through that content when I have a lot of it. And there's some components that, you know, you'll see in an application that are universal for all applications. And this is just, you know, some documents from our human interface guidelines that kind of detail a lot of this stuff. And this hub experience for a majority of apps is the same kind of experience you use for every app. And if we look at those content areas, or if we look at IE9, which is kind of the opposite of that, where it's just one screen and I use app bars, we can see that these two interfaces are the primary ones that I would use in Windows 8. And the best way to think about this is you've seen some of the hub applications that I've showed you when we looked at USA Today or when you look at the start screen. IE is a great example of an application that just uses nav bars for you to navigate around. Another great example of an application that would do that would be a Kindle, right, when you actually read content. So we go through and we look at all of that stuff pretty easily. And this is an example of an app. Remember I told you I loved food? Well, this could be kind of a food spotting app where, you know, I go figure out where I want to eat with my friends. And that hub screen might be the top screen. And all of those sections just directly can manipulate me to all the detailed views, either from a people perspective or a restaurant perspective. But then they can also, when I go into section views, kind of take me to those detail areas too. And then I can navigate back up to these different areas and down as well with jump menus and contact lists, which means that this basic interface structure means that I don't really need to worry about where I'm going to be or when I have to be there. So pride and craftsmanship we also discussed, and we talked about typography being important. You see that in a lot of the applications. And it creates a set of structure and rhythm for our content, and it's also how we consistently use a small size and weight to kind of establish information hierarchy. And we use a standard type ramp, and we also use it for certain sections in the content. And then we actually use other type ramps for international collections. And you'll actually see this type ramp in different apps that I actually showed you earlier. And then you'll actually also see it in our header structures. And we actually use a different font than Sego in different apps where if you have a reading experience. And you have flexibility to use your own typography if you'd like. We just really want to make sure you use that type ramp so that hierarchy exists. And then finally we talked about the grid. And you see that in some of our applications where we don't want grid lines, we don't want artifice or visual noise where it doesn't need to be there. And we can use proportion to kind of convey what's important. So this is what our type looks like on the grid. These are just different examples of screens and kind of the red line of what our layout looks like in applications. And yes?
No, we have 5 minutes.
Yep, thank you. So we can see some of the different interfaces and how this would play out. So this is what we call the silhouette in Windows 8. And you'll see that silhouette play out in the diagram I showed you. You'll see it play out in wildly different applications. And you'll see it actually play out in all of our different templates that we have. So these are just screenshots from an actual project template that you might start a design with that show you different views and how consistent that is. And these models have been around in design forever. So you may look at Rolling Stone, and you know what? Are they using a type ramp here? They are. Are they using a visual hierarchy with their photos and their typography? They actually are, right? Even Wired Magazine does that as well. So you can have a lot of variety and uniqueness in how your application looks, but this structure makes it incredibly powerful for people to understand how the application works. And we talked earlier in some of the talks this morning about why magazines are so awesome and easy to use. It's because they've been doing things like this for decades. And finally, we can actually bring those types of experiences to software. And size and proportion is incredibly important. When we talked about being fast and fluid, we have a whole set of built-in animations and libraries. And you saw that with Cocktail Flow and some of the apps that I showed you earlier. And you get all these things for free when you build because they're actually built into the interface in terms of how they can come out and how you can quickly use them with a rich animation library. And being fast and fluid is about understanding that this can be a touch-first device and that scrolling is incredibly powerful for us. And if we start locking accesses down so we don't scroll in two different directions, we can really ground the interface and do things like swipe to select. That means we can use gestures that are more effective than ones we use on other devices, such as press and hold. Being authentically digital is about moving beyond the physical metaphors and understanding that we don't need to have them in our software. And sometimes they're just out of touch and don't make any sense anymore. And we get away from things like icons and start using glyphs that actually convey information, like you saw in some of our live tiles. And that, combined with the fact that we can use contracts and use things like our search contract and sharing, lets us be more powerful with how we work with other applications. And we saw that in terms of talking about photos and the file picture and how we would share and search things by using those charms. And what this model means is for users is they only have one rock to lift to have to figure out how to use all these applications. So even though Windows looks very unfamiliar to people right now that have used Windows, or even other touch devices, it's something that's actually very easy to learn. And once you've learned it for one app, you kind of know how all apps work. So in summary, these are kind of the principles we think about when we talk about Metro or modern style design with Windows. And that's it. Thank you. And I will be around for questions after this, during the break, and during the happy hour too. So we're going to let the next speaker get set up, and then we'll go.